A very warm welcome to the E-Lounge. Insight and inspiration stimulate great conversation. In our E-Lounge, hosted by Mteto Nyati, Chief Operating Officer at the Gautrain Management Agency, engaging leading opinions for your benefits. Our next book on review is one of South Africa's bestsellers, Betting on a Darkie by Mteto Nyati. Mr. Nyati is the CEO of Ultron. Forbes Africa has identified him as a master strategist, a turnaround specialist, and an ethical leader. This is one of our knowledge share platforms anchored in our values of leadership and learning. We do hope that you will tune in, engage, and take away the knowledge from this great conversation. Remember, those who desire to lead should read. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Me as your guest, Mteto Nyati, the Chief Operating Officer of the Gautrain Management Agency. I am delighted today to have my guests. But before we get on with it, I am reminded of these words. Two roads diverge into the yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down as far as I could to where it bent down into the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps a better claim, because it was grassy and wanted way. Though for the passing of time, another end, Robert Frost says clearly, I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages hence, two roads diverge into the woods, and I took the less trouble. By that I have made a difference. My guest took the road less trouble. Even when his father insisted on the road he knew, he took the road less trouble. Even when everybody says not in that direction, he still took the road less trouble. Today, my guest, Mteto Nyati, it feels a bit strange as an African to call an older brother Mteto by name, but he insists. Welcome, Mteto. And if I were to introduce you, I would run out of adjectives. The one who blazes trails is more of a clear adjective. He's a trailblazer and he has been everywhere. He is the former CEO of Microsoft South Africa, former local CEO of MTN, now the CEO of Gautrain. Mteto, maybe I must tell the guests. Guys, if I seem a bit starstruck, it's because when you're in the presence of greatness, you must acknowledge it. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Tsepo. Thank you for those kind words. Truly, truly appreciate it. I must say that I was giving you some feedback now about how I believe your company is doing, your positioning. It certainly is a reflection of your leadership style and that one of your CEO, trying to reach beyond your own reach. The work that you guys are doing here is the work that does not just touch people of Gautrain, it also touches generally South Africans. So great, I'm very pleased to be here with you.
Thank you, Mteto. I was hoping the accolades would be issued by me, but it seems that this is going to be, what do they call it, a great conversation. And we have to be able to make sure that we try by all means to engage beyond this conversation.
Yes.
Everybody's wondering, beyond everything that everybody knows about you, who is Mteto Nyati?
Mteto Nyati is, I'm a family man, at the very, very core, I'm a family man. I'm a guy who is I'm not the most talkative person. I'm a deep thinker, but I'm also somebody who believes more in action, so that's the kind of combination of a person that I am. Family man at the core, somebody who's highly driven, does not have too many words, very, very strong driver, but also somebody who cares deeply about about the world, about South Africa, and about humanity.
But Mteto, some people could even go as far as saying you are fearless. You dare tread where angels even fear. Is that a description that probably has been used quite a lot with you?
Some people say that I'm fearless, but what they don't know is that internally, one is struggling with fear, but it's really about the courage to overcome that fear. You know, I've always, like I'm sure everybody has the fear, but the question is, what is it that you do about that fear? You know, I have the courage, and like people say that life expands or shrinks in proportion to one's courage, you know. And depending on how how is your relationship with courage, your life will reflect that, you know. And for me, it's that courage, you know, knowing that deep down you are so you are worried or concerned, but you go out there and try and do something.
And let's start in the beginning.
Yes.
You're a man from Tabase. Not very many people can be able to point where Tabase is. The man from Tabase,
Yeah.
and the man who, what do they call it, who has been able to grow to world stage.
Yes.
A Yale fellow, for that matter.
Yes.
But not very many people know where Tabase is.
Yeah.
I mean, bring us a little bit in. I mean, where is Tabase? So I know that it's somewhere near Mtata, but where is Tabase?
Yeah, Tabase is, they say that I come from Tabase, somebody had to. Somebody had to come from somewhere there, you know. It is in the Eastern Cape, in Mtata. It is a village of probably close to about maybe 8,000 people. It's a village that is, it's a village that is driven. You know, there's a lot of people who come from that village who are doing great things in South Africa today. You know, one of those people, if you were to be one person who follows rugby, many years ago, even before, you know, the lifting of this whole thing, you know, before 1994, there's a gentleman called Liston Jongwane. You know, he is one of these great rugby players, you know. People like him and many others. Our second accountant in all of South Africa, the second black accountant comes from that place. Yes, it is a place that's full of poverty, but it's also a place that is so much people who are very driven, you know, and are resourceful.
A shopkeeper's son.
Yes.
Your mother played quite an incredible role in your life.
Yes.
Similarly, your father.
Yes, both of them.
Both of them. But, you know, people think of you today and think this man can sell. You can sell sand to the Hottentots. They don't know that you started like right at an early age.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that. I was so intrigued, and especially your early morning trips where the trucks would pass you and they would hoot at you.
Yes. Look, as I was saying that I come from this village called Tabase, and my mom got married to my dad, and my dad had divorced, so he already had 6 children. He then married my mom, so I'm the firstborn. So coming in that environment, we're actually 12 of us, including our parents. There's 12. There was 12 in the family. It's like a large family. I used to say that before I heard of our former president, I used to think that we were the only family that was so huge, you know. But you know, I heard of our former president. I was comfortable, you know. Okay. So my mom, given that environment, she felt that, you know, in order for them to be able to support this large family, she decided to cash her pension. She was a teacher. My dad was a teacher too. Took her pension, she started this little shop, which ended up being the thing that transformed our entire family from, I would say, a family that was in the lower middle class to middle class, you know, helping all of us to be able to go and acquire education. You know, we've got a doctor in the family, we've got 2 engineers in the family, we've got physiotherapists in the family, we've got a lawyer in the family, we've got all of my sisters are all nurses, you know, supported by this shop that was started by my mother from her pension, you know. And to me, that says a lot about yes, being resourceful, but also understanding what is required by society, by the community that you are living under, and then serving that community with what they need. You know. So I grew up in that environment. And of course, she did not want to employ thousands of people. So I ended up being this person that she employs, you know, I call it child labor. You know, and
Today they refer it to as child labor.
So I was like, waking up in the morning, having to go, you know, even before, you know, go to school, we had to go and fetch bread from the city. From town, Mteto town. It's about 20 kilometers. Got bread, fresh produce, milk, and all of that. When the customers, when they wake up at 6 o'clock, we open, they've got everything that is fresh, which means we woke up at around 4 o'clock, you know. And that was just my life. Coming back from school, I had to come, stand behind the counter and serve customers. And that shop is the shop that shaped me. You know, when I look at the way I manage today, yes, at the core of how I manage, I think I took a lot from how my mother was managing the people that were in that shop. You know, she included them in the decision making. She treated them well. You know, she was tough, but she was fair. At the same time, the way she treated her customers. Those are the 2 things. If you were to look at the way I lead now, 2 things that I always take into any new job that I take. How the environment that I create for the employees, an enabling environment, but also focusing that entity on serving customers. Of course, I can do other things, but those are always the common things. I take it back to my time back in Tabasa.
In the shop?
Yes, yes.
Are you an early riser?
Yes. I can never know whether it is because it's part of my DNA or is it just because that that whole thing of child labor, being woken up at 4 o'clock.
Okay. How much of that routine have you kept as you grew and you became bigger and bigger? And what
I've not changed anything.
You haven't changed much.
Around 4:30, I'm someone who just wakes up and I use that time. You know, I use that time to think about the day ahead, to plan about things. I also use that time to just catch up on reading, you know, motivational things, you know, on management, on this, and sometimes I realize that, you know, if I pick some key, you know, things or wise words out of those articles, I post it on social media. So it's something that it's just part of who I am.
I forgot to raise it when I was introducing the man. The man likes, I have never met anybody who likes quotes more than I do. So now today, officially, I know somebody who likes quotes more than I do. So if you follow him on all his social media, you'll be able to see that he finds something to reflect upon and then brings it up on social media. Now, some of the things, and you're a very candid man and a very open man, you know, having siblings that were, you know, the inclusivity that your mother brought to being able to raise 10 children.
Yes. It's not easy.
And it's not easy. And how much of that inclusivity today actually forms a big part of the manner in which you've won a lot of people. Yes. Even in places where sometimes as I was reading the book, I'm saying, Do I wait until tomorrow? Maybe I must find out now. Did this story go well in this part of the chapter? But we all know it ended up well. But you've always been the kind of person who is very inclusive, and you believe in pulling in people. And how much of that comes from being in a big family?
It comes, there's a lot of that comes from not just a big family, but a family that is, I call it complicated family, because it's like, you've got putting two families together. And in that environment, there's bound to be some challenges, around a number of things, around resources, around this and that. And I remember there's a story that I relay in the book there. I think about 6 or 7. I'm playing, and in this room, I've got my brothers, my half brothers and sisters here, and then they say to me, hey, get out, get out, and I'm like, well, I think they're just joking, and I realized that actually they are not joking, they're serious, They were talking in English, so clearly it was meant for me not to be able to understand what they were talking about. So it must have been like plotting a coup. And they said, please get out. You are not one of us, And that was something that hurt me, because up to that point, I never knew that, when I saw my brothers, and there's a lot of likeness, so we all kind of look the same. And when I hear that they're saying that I'm not one of them, I just could not understand. So I ran, I go to my mother, and she sits me down and say, look, I need to tell you this thing. And she explained that, they were divorced, and she's my mother, and all of that. She was going to tell me when I was like much older enough. But now that I know. But she then said, you are part of one family. You're sharing your father. That is what is the most important thing. Focus on the fact that you guys have got one common father. These are your brothers, these are your sisters. That it was a difficult environment, but that lesson that happened in that day, it's a lesson that has helped me to navigate the issues. Because I say that I encountered apartheid before I even stepped out of my family. I encountered apartheid in my own family. As you step out now into Mtata, into the rest of the world, and experiencing a world that is so racist, you begin to realize that, how it was dealt with back there, the tools that I was given, that start to focus. You can be so consumed about differences, but focus on the things that are common. If we can all be here, looking at us, white, black, Indian, if you look deep down, what are some of the interests? What is it that we want?
Yes.
You find that actually most of us want the same thing. We want peace in our country. We want healthcare. We want great education for our children. Look at all of these things. These things are common, and focus on that. And this is the approach that I typically take when I go to companies, focusing on those things that pull us together, and bringing everybody together and creating a very fair environment.
I'm intrigued by this because, I probably, as I'm sitting there and thinking, Monday it will be Women's Day, and we don't pay enough tribute to, what do they call it, to the mothers in the nation. It is those that wake up in the morning and go to work, and in certain families the mother is a stay-at-home mother. But there is value that mothers bring that goes beyond just simply us just paying tribute on Women's Day, because
they shape us. I think I would say my personal values are largely shaped by my mother, by my parents, but in particular by my mother, and this whole thing of diversity, managing diversity, it is something that was, to me, I attributed to her. When I look at the way that, I go to any environment, whether it's in the US, it's here, or anywhere else, there are certain things that if you navigate them in the right way, you'll be able to connect with people, and that I got it from my mother. And my mother is not special. There are many mothers just like that. All of us have got those stories. Many people have got those stories.
And that is very affirming because, in Africa, we maybe, from my perspective, we don't pay enough tribute to the mothers and what do they call it? And in the modern world and where people work and everything else, and in certain families, the mother is there, but he looks after the family properly. I want to get on with this story because it's very intriguing, and it's almost difficult to be able to divorce the beginning with the end because, or with how it's going. It's not the end, with how it's going, and for me is, I look at your story and I look at it in depth, but I also look at the bits you tell about the fact that your mother saw something in you. Because there's a lot of things that she made you do, you specifically, that wasn't the work that the rest of the kids.
Yes.
In leadership, what is that light that you see in people? Because you are very good at picking good people to work with you.
Yes.
What is it that you either learn from your mother, or that you, what do they call that? It's just there, the light that you see in people.
You'll pick up that there's somewhere that people refer me as Mbazo.
Yes.
I think that's a little bit unfair in my view, but hey, that's what people call it, because I don't go into environments and cut.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the least that I do. Probably I tackle 2 or 3, 4 leaders. These are leaders that I deal with because actually leaders matter. Leadership matters. If you change that at the bottom, it's okay, it's going to change. But leadership, if you do not change that, you'll never necessarily get to where you need to. So maybe they're looking at that, right? But I go, it is this belief, it's this belief that in each and every one of us, there is greatness. I take organizations that are, I would say, mediocre in terms of performance.
Struggling, put it properly, struggling.
Struggling. And after a while, those same organizations with same people, more or less, doing exceptionally well. So what has happened there? These are the same people. It's really about the environment that we create for the people that work for us. It's also about how we demonstrate how we believe in them. Even if they don't believe in themselves, showing them that you believe in them, stretching them, giving them assignments that they may think that this is asking them to reach beyond their reach, give them those assignments, And it is that thing that people start to blossom, starting to be amazed. And it becomes like a snowball effect. You win this, you win that, and then it just becomes a belief now within you. And that is what I like doing, because it's because of that. If you leave, look at Microsoft South Africa, you look at MTN, you leave, things don't die just because you left, because you have built the capability of the organization. But it starts with giving them, allowing them to believe in themselves and giving them those stretch assignments and coaching people, guiding them, being engaged with them.
We will get to this leadership nuggets and how you end up in boarding school. And it's a proper cry, smile, and a dance. I was in stitches, but at the same time, I thought, man, how such a small event could have ended up with us not knowing a leader of the caliber of Mteto, but a mother made a decision right there and there and said, not a chance.
This one, he goes to boarding school.
Tell the story a little bit.
Because this route he's taking now is going to lead him nowhere. So she realized that, I'm one of those, I was naughty, basically, and like most of the young people, young ones, when you grow up, you try all sorts of things. So I was starting to smoke cigarette and starting to, sniff petrol and benzene. I got highs, and it was like, this was great, man, And my mother caught me with this thing, and she beat me up, and I just did not even care. I did not cry, because I was on this high. Yeah. And then she realized this is going to be bad. But then, in less than a week, she found a way to take me to St. Patrick's Mission, which is a Roman Catholic primary school. And I ended up being there. And it was really bad because, we're such a close and great, nice family. And now you are out of that picture. You are in this environment with the discipline. The discipline there. And when I look back, I say that was a great intervention because it changed. It's one of those things that changed the trajectory of my life. Even just this whole thing of discipline. Because now I've realized that whether we're talking music, sport, leadership, or anything whereby people are successful, there is one thing that is common in all of those people. It's discipline. You may have all the talent in the world. Yeah. You may have all of the brains in the world. But if you lack this thing, discipline, which is probably one of the challenges that our teams, in particular the soccer teams, are facing, it's really linked to the discipline thing. Discipline, and I got it from there.
The discipline happens. You built something that has bothered me for a very long time as a leader.
Yes.
You built personal pride. Ultimately, through the discipline, through all of that, you end up winning the Science Olympiad.
Yes.
It's quite strange. We both went to Catholic schools. We both went to, what do they call it? We were both participants in the Science Olympiad, and we both ended up as engineers. Maybe we must ask what was being done in those days. That was so good about the Science Olympiad. You know who else is also a graduate of the Science Olympiad?
Yeah, she is.
Yes, and also the CEO of Google South Africa. Alistair Mukwena.
Okay.
That's how we know each other, me and Alistair Mukwena. We were in the same Science Olympiad. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's something we need to revisit. But you build a practice out of excellence and all of that. But you also build personal pride, because in a lot of the things you say in the book, there's a lot of what you put in as being, Mteto can't fail with this. And Mteto also is a trailblazer, and being a trailblazer, the problem with it is that, the light that runs behind that star, everybody follows it. Now, in all of that, how do we, through the schooling system or everything else, build that personal pride? Because for me, it's not about discipline, it's more about people actually finding personal pride.
Yes. Finding that, connecting with that inner power within you, which says that I can do almost anything, really, I would say it's not one thing, it's a number of things that helped me to get to that point. One of them, which is a strange one, you may have picked up or not picked it up in the book, that my nickname when I was at that St. Patrick's Mission, I was playing ball there, soccer, and then I ended up actually puncturing the ball, and and I ended up getting a nickname called Double Engine. Double Engine. Think about that, and they will keep saying this thing, but what it meant is that this person, he he appears to have twice what we have.
Yes, twice the power.
Twice the power, right? And something that was actually not meant to be a compliment, really. but it's also in trying to, if you look at things, you can take that something that may be a negative thing, you use it and change it to your own benefit, to motivate you, you know? And for me, that thing is probably the thing that continues to guide me even today, that, you know, how quickly I end up, you know, transforming or turning around a company.
Yes.
It may take 10 years, other people, it may take 2 years. You know, it's those things. It's that belief in oneself. And I also think that my parents also had a lot of, you know, the way that one has been trained, I guess the projects that have been given, I would call them projects, or maybe the tasks that have been asked to do, which stretched me. It gives you that confidence that you can go and do anything, really, you know.
Ultimately, you make it to London.
Yes.
When you come back from London, your mind is set.
Yeah, you know. No.
You're going to become an engineer.
You know, just before I went to London,
yes.
I had an interview with Daily Dispatch. And they asking me, hey, you have won this science Olympiad. You know, so what are you going to be? So I tell them that, hey, yeah, excited, I'm going to be a doctor. That's me going to London.
Yeah.
Then coming back, then I am there in London and start to be exposed to so many things that I was not even aware that they exist. I mean, I come from Tabase.
Yes.
You know, I don't know about engineering. You know? So there now, here I am exposed to all of this chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, metallurgical engineering, all of these things. And I start to realize as I go deep and trying to learn about these things that, gee, these talk more to my interests than medicine.
Yes.
And I realized, actually, the person who has been planting this seed of medicine in my brain, now that I end up saying that I'm going to be a doctor, is actually my father, who he wanted to be a doctor. He didn't become a doctor. So I come back, and I've already made up my mind. For me, engineering is that's my career that I'm going to follow. It was the biggest disappointment to my dad, you know, because for him, this was like a waste of talent. You know, what are you going to do, Mr. Mbele? He called me Mr. Mbele. What are you going to do? Then I'm going to do mechanical engineering. Jesus. How can you waste such a brain to do mechanic, motor mechanic? No, but this is not motor mechanic. He never wanted to understand. Because he understood, but he didn't want to understand. You know, even all the way he took me to university, when he was dropping me there, he kept asking, you know, why don't you just go right here at Wentworth?
It's a very intriguing story because I you know, one day I'll tell my own story. But my parents were the same about me going into engineering. And worst of all, like with my father being an academic and also a lecturer, he was more worried about you know, a lot of people who do engineering do not finish.
Oh, that's the problem.
And a lot of that. But it's you know, there's a lot of things that are behind why people don't finish. But we can talk about that. Now, you land up there and you continue on, and ultimately you finish and you end up at Afrox.
At Afrox, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Afrox, I managed to get into Afrox because, firstly, because my dad was pushing me to do engineering and to do medicine, I ended up not applying to in that final year in the grade 12.
Yes.
So I ended up at the University of Transkei. Then from there I apply. So I do my first year of BSc there, right? Then I applied to Natal University to do my second year of engineering there. They tell me, no way. Coming from which university? University of Transkei, what is that? No, you go and start from
scratch.
Yeah, from scratch. Anyway, I start from year one again.
The famous University of Natal.
Yeah, I start year one. What they didn't know, actually, that helped me because now my marks.
on the first anniversary of your first year.
Yes, it's like the first semester I have got these great marks, and that's where Afrox realized, hey, we would like to partner with this guy.
Yeah.
They gave me this academic scholarship, and that created a relationship that lasted almost 12 years,
Yes.
because they supported me through university, and I also ended up working for them another 7 years, So that's how I connected with Afrox.
But you're going into an environment where they have never seen I
was an experiment.
You have always been an experiment.
I was an experiment.
I will ask you another question later on about you joining Altron. At what point in time did you not think this was a political experiment?
I was an experiment there because, but I only realized once I started to work for Afrox. There's a gentleman by the name of Lawton Love. He used to be the BMF president.
Yes.
Before then, but he was a human resource manager in Afrox. He had pushed very hard for Afrox to start to hire and bring on board black employees at professional level, at engineering level. So he is the one who convinced them to invest, hence this experiment I'm saying was so they pick up one person, and that how I performed was going to determine whether they continue to expand this program or not. The good thing is I managed to finish, so they continued to bring even more and more black students. But getting into that environment, it was also very difficult because they were not used to that, they're not set up for that. Yes, there were blacks, but the blacks were in different positions. It was the most difficult environment.
Having done that, you do something interesting. You get there, you start taking on jobs that most people wouldn't take on.
Yes.
And the more complex ones.
Yes.
Like you setting up a routing system for what do they call it, for the drivers,
for the trucks,
and everything else.
Yeah.
As I said to you in the beginning, you have to admit that you're other people say I'm either fearless or I could be stupid enough to not know that this is dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I struggled with Fortran, Fortran.
Yeah, I know Fortran. Yes.
Fortran at university, because I think it was my final year when I got introduced into this programming language.
Yes.
Then I come to Afrox, and they've got this thing. So I end up signing myself up to write a production planning system for them, which meant that I had to teach myself now the programming language called DB3 at the time. So I taught myself. I started to enjoy this computer thing, and in fact, the first laptop, not these ones that we know now. It was this very small little thing. It was just not.
But a small little
but they
like
bought.
that.
Yes, they bought me. They bought me this thing, and I was like, weekend, and I'm into this thing. I just got hooked up, and from that I ended up having to do this distribution system for Afrox. And I must tell you, the fact that now I'm in IT.
I was about to say
it's
the
linked to
IT
that.
bit.
It's linked to that.
The IT bug bit.
Yeah.
The IT bug bites. And then you what do they call it? You continue on with Afrox.
Yeah.
But I looked at something, and as I was reading through the list of people you go to the next company, you go to Nampak.
Yes, yes.
As you get to Nampak, I look at the list of people that, what do they call it, that came from Nampak.
Yes.
Nampak was an amazing
It
breeding
was,
ground for, what do they call it, for future leaders.
They were so
you're talking
good.
Papi Muletsane, you're talking Tawu Mure,
Yes,
and
yes,
all
yes,
of these
yes.
guys.
Khomotso Pahlane.
Yes, Khomotso Pahlane.
Yes,
In
yes.
your list of people you know,
Yes, yes.
you have an interesting back pocket. Yes.
Motwanetse Lefoka, she
Yes.
used to be the CEO of the post office, you know.
That in itself, that group
The
of
commissioner of SARS.
people. Yes, Obama
Obama Khashula, yeah, that's the group of people that we were together. They recruited all of us to come and help Nampak. At the time, Nampak was struggling. Maybe they're still struggling, but they were struggling because we had just lifted international sanctions
Yes.
against South Africa. So what was happening is that the customers, their customers in South Africa, now were able to import products that they could not from overseas, and those products could land here, some of them at 20 or 30% cheaper than we could manufacture. So this group of people that you're talking about, we were brought in to come in and drive and improve the manufacturing processes of Nampak so that it can be globally competitive. And that program was called World-Class Manufacturing, you know. And I mean, here you are dealing with manufacturing techniques that you could associate with Japan, you know. So, and again, you get so much exposed to things that are leading edge, you know, the thinking, and also not just thinking, implementation. Because it was also, you had to translate into creating a bottle that is cheaper than the one that they're implementing, they're bringing from overseas.
Yes.
No, yeah.
Now, that builds your sense of quality
Yes, yes.
in,
yes.
in everything.
Yes, yes,
And,
yes.
and ultimately, strangely enough, when you get to Altron, you sell the manufacturing businesses. So I thought you would turn those around, but we will get to that.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you now are there, but the IT bug is big. IBM calls, and now you go into the big blue. And when you get to the big blue,
Well, not initially because they called.
Yes, you were
and
about
then
to
there
go
was
to
SAB.
Yes.
So I go there, and in my mind, I'm in manufacturing, and I'm an engineer, mechanical engineer, right? and these guys are asking me to come to do IBM, and like. But anyway, to cut the long story short, Mpho Letlape,
yes,
Mpho sat me down and really convinced me that, hey, this company today is currently led by some Americans that are here on assignment, and in a few years' time, we would need to have leaders that are local, taking over from the Americans. You know, we need people like you, blah blah blah. Yes, it's not going to be an easy journey. It's going to take you a while, but this is the game plan. You know, and we are also going to send you abroad. You know. And when I look at all of that, it just gives me, okay, let me try this new area. You know? I trusted Mpho. I mean, sat with her. I was, and yeah, I jumped into IBM, and it changed. Or once again, completely changed. I moved to a new industry.
she did say it's just manufacturing beer, Mteto.
Yeah.
Don't make such a big deal out of it.
Yes.
But I think you would have done well there anyway.
Yes.
Now you're in the big blue. And in the big blue, in itself, the place is a bit jumbled.
The people is going through difficult times.
Yes.
It's going through difficult times. They've just come back because now, after the lifting of the sanctions, they come back. They had left South Africa, and they're coming back here. The company is not doing very well, so they bring in a new, we call it country general manager, Sal Faso from the US, to come. And I'm like, here, I think about like 4 months. Then I hear that there's going to be retrenchments. And I'm like, I've just left a much more secure job in Nampeg for this thing, and now there's going to be retrenchment. I have not even proven myself in this environment. Gee, I mean, this is going to be difficult. And you start to hear the list of people being compiled, and then I get called, and they said, look, you actually, your profile is the profile of the people who are looking for. You know, we've got a lot of people here that understand IT. But you are bringing industry knowledge, which is what we are lacking. That's what now Lou Gesner was trying to do globally, trying to align the company to focus on customers, and focusing on customers by sector. You know, so said, hey, you are the experts in manufacturing, so we would like you to be part of this manufacturing sector. So I ended up, looking after a company called Sapi.
Yes.
Yeah, Sapi and Mondi. And it was, that was the start of a great career within IBM.
You had gotten back a bit into mechanical engineering there.
Yes,
out in
yes,
the
yes.
plants and
yes, going to the
looking-
plant. I went
Yes.
to the Ngodwana plant.
Yes.
That's another thing. I mean, many of my colleagues, they have never been to they do not quite understand the business of their customers.
Yes.
So just going to that Ngodwana plant, understanding the challenges of the customer, it helps you to be able to come up with solutions from a technology standpoint, from IT, that help you to address, you're able to sell better because you're talking to the challenges of the customer, not theoretical things,
Ultimately, you get to be able to develop a model that
Yeah.
functions of being able to deal with, medium and small companies in IBM. And I mean, you were a pioneer at that point in time. Because
Yes.
large companies like that were not thinking in that manner.
No.
And then creating multi-channel thinking. How much of this was it just simply you observing, and how much of it was more from your studies and ultimately after you now had an MBA? I'm trying to look back at it and saying, but multi-channel thinking is developing as a way of doing things.
Yes.
Probably in the last 10 years, but you had been doing this 20 years back.
Yes, but I think the company that influenced me
Yes.
the most in that thinking is a company that IBM did not even want to look at. They hated the company. They competed with this company.
Okay.
And and that company is Microsoft.
Okay.
Because it was beating them. You
Yeah.
know, and when you look at how Microsoft actually was able to just be everywhere, they multiplied. Not through employing thousands and thousands of people, they multiplied through creating partners who would go and represent them in the different markets. And when you look at that, how successful that was, and you start bringing that, okay, here you are now, I'm being asked. IBM has always been very good in selling to large enterprises, face to face. Now I'm being asked to go and start and selling into small and medium-sized enterprises. There are millions of these companies. We don't have enough people. Yes. We can never have enough people to do that. So you look at the models, and the models that spoke to me was the Cisco model, and it was also the Microsoft model. And that's where, I put together some of that, and also thinking that, hey, let us use tele,
Okay.
Go and find out, check the customer first, whether there's a need. If there's a need, you don't have to drive to that.
Yes.
If there's a need, then take that opportunity, pass it to your partner, support your partners, So, and that ended up being something that I was actually asked to take from South Africa and go and implement it across Europe, which was a great thing for South Africa.
You start building a global network.
Yes.
You are now in Paris, newly married, with what do they call it? Ultimately, with your daughter in tow, with
Yes.
Anda in tow, and
Yes.
Anda probably lives the way she lives now, and she's all over the place because she's a world citizen. She's never ever been one of she's a South African by birth, but
Yes,
beyond that, she's grown up being all over the place.
Yes.
You're quite a reflective man, and you think quite a lot about things that had happened.
Mm.
That meeting when you had the presentation and it didn't work out.
Mm.
And you're also not the kind of person who beats themselves up quite a lot. You pick yourself up from the floor quite quickly.
Mm.
What changed you a lot in that meeting and that experience? And you know, a lot of people are sitting there and listening to you now and going, this man, I mean, when somebody reads through your life from your profile that they read in the newspaper, you just look like a person who's just been blessed, who's never ever had days when things didn't work out. That one meeting that, you know, you did that presentation and when you reflect about it later on and says, had I asked my boss, you know, before that, but what impact did that one meeting have on you?
You know, we sometimes think that asking for help is a weakness.
Yes.
And in fact, it's not. It's actually courageous if you're asking for help. And so I came from South Africa with that mentality. Hey, I've been handpicked from South Africa, and now I'm here. I'm coming to come and show these people, you know, how to do this thing. So I'm kind of like, I know everything, you know, right? And yet I didn't. You know? I didn't. So if I were to go now and ask for help, it would diminish my value.
Yes.
In fact, that was the biggest mistake I've made, because had I dealt with different people, I would have taken the next flight of South Africa together with my family, or from Paris, sending me back home, you know, because of that mistake. Because here I was in a grand, you know, they had invited all the leaders of the small and medium-sized enterprise across all of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Even the guy who had taken over from me here in South Africa, he was there. So here is the stage, and I'm standing there. I just did not show up well, you know. And when they were doing, they are brutal there, each and every presentation you do, they rate the person. I was the lowest. I mean, you have never had that kind of a feedback before. And now you see yourself being the lowest ranked, you know, and the comments there, you look at the comments, you realize that, hey, I made a big mistake. Here are people who understand this environment. It would have taken nothing from me, nothing at all, to just check them, to ask for their input, guidance, you know, because this is going to be my first presentation in this big space, you know, and I wanted to demonstrate, hey, I am this big guy, you got from South Africa. You did not make a mistake. Yeah. So I learned a lot out of that. Even today, you know, that's the thing that I continue to encourage my team, really asking for help and say it's not a weakness. It is not, and there is so much reluctance. My leaders, the ones that are reporting, they are so reluctant to ask for help.
I was lucky enough to meet a guy early in my career. He said to me, never get attached to your reports.
Yes.
And I asked him why. He says it will get reviewed 3 times before it finally is. And from that day, I made peace with the fact that I actually asked for review up front and everything else.
Yes.
Now what do they call it? You make it past that. And ultimately, you sort out the model and it works out.
Yes.
You know, have built up a business in Europe and, you know, a few years later, under a little bit older, and you are really, what do they call it? And now IBM is thinking, what do we do with this man?
Yes.
But then you get advice for you to go and become a Yale World Fellow.
Yes. It was actually my boss, because in that unit, it was small and medium-sized business. I was reporting to Massimo, an Italian, Massimo Bonciani in Europe, and he was reporting to Mark Lautenbach
Yes.
in the US. So he was our global boss. Mark Lautenbach, when I was still in South Africa, had offered me to be his personal assistant. But the job was only going to be available like 6 months down the line, and this other one in Europe ended up being available much earlier, so I ended up taking that one. So Mark Lautenbach, having seen the work that we had done in Europe, he felt that, hey, we need to invest in this guy, and here let me apply for him in the Yale World Fellows Program. And in that year, it was the first time that that program accepted people from business, because it's typically not leaders from business. They don't, I don't know why. So it was me and a gentleman from India. We ended up being part of that. That program also shaped my thinking now about leadership, trying to connect two things. Yes, you need to deliver results in terms of business, but at the same time, can you also make a difference in terms of society? Can you try and find an intersection point? It's not just about making money for profits and profits for the company. Can you also have a positive impact in terms of society as a business? So that's what that program was helping the leaders who were there to do, you know, and it landed, and it's something that I continue to do now. Each and every leadership role that I do, I try and find that intersection point, doing good business and doing good. You know, trying to do those two things.
While you're there, you also develop a voice.
Yes.
A political voice that would at some point in time be quoted by the great Thabo Mbeki himself. And it's a voice that you've kept right up until today.
Yes, yes.
You develop a very strong political voice, and one that, what in that environment, yes, you had come from from the area of the Eastern Cape, where it was the gateway to a lot of missions for the ANC and everything else, and you already had a political grounding.
Yes.
But the question is, right there in the US of all places, you develop a voice about what is good about our country, what's not good, and what do you think we should be doing.
Yes. Yes. Look, all the way at University of Natal, I was already an ANC member, of course, underground, you know. And so I had that influence all the way. Although actively not, I was the one who was supporting people who were coming in the country, you know. So I had that. But the thing that made me to want to say things is to have, you know, this thought leadership thing. It came, yes, and when I was in Yale, but it was when I looked at what is happening in our country then. It was still under Thabo Mbeki, and although from how it was, it may look like things were going well, but I was really, really concerned about some of the choices that we were making, you know, in particular around BEE, you know, and I just felt that some of this thing was going to come back and bite us. You know, we are not building people that are able to stand on their own. We are encouraging people to be what I would call parasites, you know. Go and find a white guy, a white firm, and then just stick yourself around that particular person and feed off that person. We did not encourage people to go and build their own enterprises. Look at the history of the Afrikaners. You don't find anywhere where the Afrikaner went to the British and said, can I please have a piece of Anglo, you know, a little bit, 20%? No, they went out and built their own companies from scratch, you know, and that's how where they are today. They came almost at the same level back then, but they are at a different level right now, you know. through the choices that they have made, I just felt that this approach is going to kill the black initiative, you know. So I started to challenge the whole thing, because it's just the same even in, you know, when you think about the engineering there, you know, when you are alone there, you are competing against these white guys, you start to realize that we have what it takes. You know, we don't need handouts. You know, we can do things on our own. You know, we can compete and beat the best that is out there. So that was that thing. And so I started to, so in those discussions, in those contributions that I made, sometimes very much against some of the thinking of Thabo, and sometimes aligned, you know, and I think that's where we ended up earning some kind of a respect, you know, because what I was saying was not necessarily the most popular thing, but it was the right thing for our country. Yeah.
Your BE views are almost as violent as mine, but
Yes.
I think we agree on that one.
Yeah.
On that one, we agree.
Yeah.
Now, you do something interesting. You're supposed to be going in the one direction. You're a big IBM person, and you're being recommended high up, upstairs, in actual fact, above,
above
your
my
boss's, what do they call it, office, and suddenly something comes up, and again, the men who treads where angels even fear. Microsoft, your beloved, model that you thought had fallen apart and they are upside down and all sorts of other things, and just purely because they themselves were not really dealing with BEE properly.
Yes. So here I am. Now I'm back in South Africa. I took a job in IBM back home. Done 3 years in this role, which is like second in charge in IBM. Then you are there now. There's no other place but to go to be the man in charge. And that man in charge was not ready to be moving. So in my discussions with him, we agreed that I should be the person who, once again, who leaves the country. We agree. So I end up getting an offer in IBM in US. As hours, and I prepare my family for this move. Of course, they're excited about going to the US and looking forward. We tell the schools that we're leaving. Then Microsoft comes. And then I realized that I spent almost a year at Yale. And there they were saying that they are preparing each one of us to have a positive impact in their own, wherever, in their own countries, in our own countries. Now I am leaving South Africa. The chances are I will never be able to come back, because the job that I'm taking now is going to be, there will never be a job that is, equivalent to that one back here. So I'm going to be moving completely out of South Africa. I realized, no, I will never be able to do what had been driving me to have this positive impact. Then comes the opportunity at Microsoft. They tell me that, hey, they're struggling, thinking about whether they should continue to be here or not. The challenges around BEE, the challenges around customer satisfaction. Customers are unhappy with them. They also have got challenges. The government of South Africa had made a decision not to buy Microsoft. I said, wow, this is interesting. I would like to be part of solving this problem. So I signed up, and then my wife is like, but, really? You want to go there? And so it's a big disappointment that we cannot go to the US, but at the same time, why do you think you are going to be the one who fixes this thing? But anyway, I said, look, we can find a way, always find a way to help this company to be locally relevant. And through our BEE, the structure of our BEE, which is now implementing what I was talking
Yes.
about at Yale, saying, let us promote entrepreneurs. Let's find people who are doing great things, support them, and help those people to become global, which is what we implement. It's probably the first one in South Africa
Yes.
to do something like
To
that.
do equity equivalent.
Yeah, equity equivalent. Which kind of changed completely the landscape now. Starting to have BEE, it is not about being politically connected, but looking at people that are able to do great things, that are able to provide value, and supporting those entrepreneurs.
There's a thing that has always bothered me in BEE, and at times it actually is reflected in. My worry is that if we don't build a bigger pie, we're cutting up what's already there.
Yes.
And to me, I think one of the things that came about of the scheme that you built up there,
Yes.
it was actually quite innovative also.
Yes,
And for me, it was that it was growing
Yes, the pie.
the pie.
Yes.
It was actually growing the market, and it was
Yes.
also growing your channels.
Yes, exactly.
And all of that. And then there's not everybody who's going to like you.
Yes, of course. Because even the easiest thing we could have done, we could have told Microsoft that sell us to management
Yes.
20%. My leadership team would have been great. I'm a black guy. I get shares, and we're made.
We're good,
we're all good. So immediately now you are coming up with this strategy which does not talk to those shares.
Yeah.
Even amongst your colleagues, it's like, but I mean, there is this other option. Why are we not going this direction, which is going to help us? Our interest. So and in government, they just did not like this approach.
Yeah.
They want to, but of course, if we do that one of selling shares, political connected people are going to be the one who are going to be pushed in. So they were looking for that. The good thing is we just have to keep. If you believe in something, keep pushing, getting the right people. I had a lot of support from the Director General of Trade and Industry, who helped me through the different ministers there. And to cut the long story short, I can tell you 2 or 3 years down the line, the Minister of Trade and Industry, all he could talk about was promoting those kind of schemes.
No, I'll be honest with
Yeah.
you. I mean, when I got into transformation and started understanding BEE,
Yes.
regulations, and eventually became an expert at it, I found equity equivalence to be very strange.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the company that I worked and that
Yeah.
I led as a director, they had gone with the directions in Canadian company, and they had gone with where they sold their shares locally.
Yes,
And
yes.
I was violently opposed to the idea. But having understood later on the Microsoft model,
Yes.
I understood the same way. I feel very strongly that first and foremost, you're not going to have transformation unless you grow people.
Yes.
You've got training, and you've got give them skills, and you give them support for them to grow.
Yes.
You're not going to have transformation.
Yes.
You can talk about it as much as you can. You will only manage a few changes in society and all of that. But if you start empowering people big time, then you are getting to a point where you're bringing on change. And for me, the Microsoft deal was incredible. When I looked at it, and I thought, wow, this is innovative, and it actually changed my idea about what do they call it, about equity equivalence. In actual fact, I find them much more useful than actually what a lot of international companies do is they create a South African subsidiary.
Yes, they create which does work only in the public sector, which
so
is really
a South African subsidiary, and that's that. You're flying high. You've rebuilt MS, and it's doing very well. You've actually redirected everything else in there. Before we get there, the party to Mozambique.
Yeah.
I am intrigued about your values and things that are important to you.
Look, first for me, you remember that I said that there are always two things that I focus on.
Yes.
It's the employees
Yeah.
and it's the customers,
Yeah.
right? So as part and parcel of recognizing employees, when people have done well, you recognize them. We have a great trip, and IBM, we took the whole department, about 300 of them, we
Yeah.
moved to Sun City. We had a big, thing, recognizing their efforts there. So that's the kind of thing that I really like to do, And so the same thing at Microsoft. Here we are, second year, we are doing very well. We've turned around the company. And I negotiate with my boss, Ali, that, hey, I would like to take the whole subsidiary. Let's go on this trip, Mozambique, cruise to Mozambique Islands. And of course, they were concerned about security.
Yes.
So if it ends up the whole ship sinking, what will happen, then we put together some plans to make sure that people can be rescued. Then you started to see, some of the things that are happening here. Not that one is becoming like too much of a dictator or anything, but these people, their families allowed us to take them.
Yes.
And now they are behaving in ways that are really not consistent with the values, my values and the values of the company. I just would not like our brand to be associated with what is going on here. Then I realized, but there's nothing I can do. We are already now here. I said, okay, the next trip, we have to do it different. We have to do it different. So again, trying to get consensus and being democracy, we belong in this world of democracy. So I sent out a survey. Next trip, should we or shouldn't we be going with our spouses and partners? Next trip. So of course, to me, it was like an obvious thing because I'm sure that, it's going to be almost like 100%. People are going to say, let's go with our partners and spouses. So I got a shock of my life when I see the results. People do not want to go with their spouses, and I'm like, no. This is not the result that I was hoping for. No. And this is and unfortunately that's how democracy is, But okay, unfortunately, this is not a government thing. This is a company, and here in this place, I'm the leader, so I will make the decision that yes, here are the results, but going forward, when we go to these events, we are going to go with our partners. Even though you say this thing. They were very, very shocked. They were unhappy. But the next one we go with our partners, it just changes everything. The people come back and say, thank you for that idea.
Yes.
So for some of these things, you do not always have to go with the majority, If you know what is right.
Let me ask you a question. And for me, it's always a lot of people who have done very well. They're probably on to their second, third, marriage and everything else. You've managed to balance both. You've managed to have a very solid grounding with the family and all of that, and all of that, and at the same time be successful at business. And in certain people's minds, you gotta sacrifice one. A lot of people, and in actual fact, one of my mentors says, a lot of people are business successes, but they're family failures. How have you managed that?
Yeah. So I think if you go back to one of your original questions, you had a question about, I can't remember how you put it, but it spoke to the self-belief. It spoke to, if you look at some of the actions that some of us are taking, and we end up doing all of the things that we're doing, having affairs in the companies that we work for. At the end of the day, if you look down, deep down, it's actually we are the ones who have got a problem. You know, we are trying to prove to ourselves, you know, that we are worth, we are this, we've got this power and
power,
this. Yes. So there is emptiness. So we are trying to fill that thing. You're trying to fill it through conquering. You are conquering out there. I think way back for me, I became comfortable with knowing that first, and also realizing that people, that if I want to be successful, really truly successful, I need to have a very stable family. Mm-hmm. That's the place where I don't want to be fighting when I go home. You know, when I go home, I want to feel comfortable, relaxed there. But if I'm doing all of these other things, yes, I'm going to be working very hard here at work, but I'm also going to have a big problem at home. It's going to, I just cannot do both. So I made a conscious decision. As a result, I say to people, you need to ask yourself the question, what are my values? Because we go around with what I called a default setting, like a smartphone. You know, for this smartphone, maybe you bought it in China. It ends up having a language being set as Mandarin. You know, you are not going to be able to. You need to set it to the things that work for you. Mm-hmm. You know, so you grow up in a particular environment. You take that environment influences your values, but at some point in your life, you've got to assess yourself. Are these values that are picked up in that, are they consistent with the kind of person I want to be?
With your beliefs.
Yeah. If not, are they going to help me to get to where I need to get? If not, get rid of them. You don't have to be married to values that are not serving you, right? So I made a conscious decision a number of years ago that I've got just 4 values. Family is one of them. Family, integrity, excellence, and fairness. Those are the 4 values that I have. You can look at my behavior, how I do things. All of that is going to be interpreted. You can interpret how I do things based on these 4 things. You know, when it comes to the choices that I make, you know, it's a board meeting. My daughter or my wife is sick. Hey, it's not even a question. I go, you know, attend to my family. Because my values are very clear, they're guiding me. It's not. It helps me to deal with so many things that throw. But if you are not clear about these things, you'll end up being torn. You know, being torn. Hey, like Mteto. Hey, my customer wants to do a dinner with you. Of course. You are the CEO, I need to go and have dinner with another CEO of the company. Yeah, not dinner, I need to have a meeting with him. But for me, you remember, I'm a morning person. Yes. So to go and do dinner is going to be a problem for me. I'm very tired at that time. So I need to be with my family then. So I said, no, I need to be with my family, but I can do breakfast. Okay. I can do lunch with your customer, you know. And people understand that after a while. They understand and they align with that. You know, you need to align your life with the things that come natural to you. And you end up removing so much stress in your life because you are just being natural. You know, you are going in line with who you are. You are not acting. Does it make sense?
It makes more sense to me. I mean, there is nothing you said there. You're preaching to the choir.
Yes,
so,
I know.
You're doing well at MS. Sfiso Dabengo calls.
Yes.
And
Because
he's got a company that's bleeding and it's what do they call it? And it's in the middle of a strike.
yeah, he calls me. I was in year 3
Yeah.
at Microsoft, year 3, and I had made a commitment to my boss that I will be there at least for 5 years.
Mhm.
So he calls me at the end of year 3. I tell him no, I can't. I mean, I've got this commitment.
Yeah.
Okay. Disappears. Comes back in year 4. No, Sifiso, I told you, that I've got this commitment.
Yeah.
Anyway, in year 6, he comes and I said, no, yeah, I'm ready. I've now transitioned this company to, to someone, so I can, and I think I can add value in terms of MTN. And the company is, as you are rightly pointing out, the employees are on strike.
Yeah.
Who would want to take that kind of a job? Here are the employees with placards saying all sorts of things about their leaders, right? And now we are going to be that leader. Who would? But you need to understand, though, when I assessed that environment, I said, okay, why would employees go and say, these are professionals. MTN is a professional company.
Yeah.
These are professionals.
It's knowledge workers.
These are not blue-collar workers. These are. Why would they go there? They would do that if there's something we are not doing right as management. Okay, so as their leaders, which means that thing is within our control.
Yes.
Whatever that thing is, I don't know what it is, but it is within our control. So what else is a problem with MTN? I realized that when I moved into MTN, I moved from Vodacom. So when I got the job at MTN, I was a Vodacom customer.
Yes.
So I had to, of course, clearly
To port the number.
That whole weekend, my family and I could not be contacted. We kind of like fell into some kind of a black hole, So I realized that there is something terribly wrong with regards to how we're treating customers here, So it became like a personal mission for me that, hey, we need to go and fix how this company deals with customers, And, so when I look at those things, I found that actually the problems of MTN South Africa, these problems, most of them are within the control of management. It's not things that are outside of our control, so we can fix them. So I took the challenge. But were you to ask me, go and take SAA? No, I wouldn't.
I do have a question for you.
No, I won't take SAA.
Yeah.
Why? Because SAA's problems are not necessarily, most of them are structural.
Yes.
They've got nothing to do, you may be as good as whatever, but they have got a structural problem. South Africa is at the bottom of... yeah. So when you look at that, the cost the cost of fuel is outside of your control. Rand dollar exchange rate outside of your control. All of these things, it just did not make sense. I would not that one. Mm-hmm.
Me and you can talk until the cows come
Yeah.
home. And I want to give the listeners and the viewers out there a chance to ask more questions, and probably I'll get to that. But you get MTN out of a hole.
Yeah.
And I actually think you need to go back there, because I am a 22-year customer of MTN, and 2 weeks ago I nearly left them.
Really?
They're fallen into a hole again. Systems are not working. Whatever you had set up then has now fallen into a hole again. And they are doing very strange things. But that is besides the point. You've got more important things to worry about. It has started. And the turnaround is working and it's moving forward. The Altron issue comes up.
Yes.
I wouldn't have even touched that with a barge pole. Well, who owns a barge pole these days? But I wouldn't have touched that with a barge pole. Do you have any regrets with not finishing the work you had started off at what do they call it, at MTN?
Look, the good thing about big companies is that you've got a lot of talent,
Yes.
So at a personal level, I feel that I did not quite finish it.
Yeah.
But when I look back at some of the things that we set out to do, I'm pleased with some of the work that they have done there. Yes, I've got some regrets, but I don't regret having made the choice to go to Altron. Not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you get there, you are in Altron. And for me, that is still one of those. At what point in time through the conversations, we all know the Founder family, we all know Altron and how it had been built and where it comes from. And it's a lily-white African company that had been built. It's got now external shareholders and all sorts of other things. It's bleeding money. At what point in time did you not think this must be some sort of a political experiment of sorts, getting in a black guy to come in? At what point in time? I mean, you're looking at this thing and yes, during the time when you were in MTN, you tried to buy Altron.
Yes.
And so your due diligence was already done by the time it showed up on your doorstep.
That was in the most, that's what you are mentioning now.
Yes.
It's key to the decision that I made. Yes. Because as I was sitting at MTN, looking at how can we change this telecommunications company to be more than just a telecommunications company, to do more than just voice.
Yes.
I looked around and said, wow, that's interesting. Can we go and find out what assets does Altron have? And we go there, we do a due diligence, and we realize, wow, as I was doing the due diligence together with, we're helped by this company, the consulting company, the US one, it was caught up in this.
The McKinsey.
McKinsey, yeah, yes. McKinsey. As we're being helped by McKinsey, we go there, we do this. I realized, this company has got such great assets. Healthcare, Netstar, vehicle tracking, financial inclusion companies in there. All of these great assets, but nobody really knows about this thing, But, I make the call that unfortunately because they've had so many other companies that we were not interested in, we decided not to buy them. So that, my understanding of the company itself and what I thought its potential had is the one thing that helped me. But the other one is the fact that it was, in fact, an Afrikaner company, a white company. That is the attraction. Because you think about South Africa and you say, and people say we need to get rid of this white monopoly capital. And getting rid, it means actually destroying them, right? I do not subscribe to that. When you look at our unemployment rate sitting at about 40-something, how can we afford to even get rid of companies, destroy them, when we've got such a high level of unemployment? And also, that thinking is so much misinformed. Why? Because you go into those companies, they may be white at the top, but 60% of the employees that are in there are black. So you destroy them, you're actually creating even worse mess for the people that you are trying to solve for. So my view is that we need to go and help these companies to transform and make these companies to be relevant to the South Africa that we are living in. In the process, you save jobs, you save all of these things. So to me, that was a personal mission that let me go and do this thing. And it may even be like a microcosm of the kind of South Africa that I would like to see. if we were to solve this thing and show that we can work together and create something that is bigger than what I found there, which means this country has got a hope. We can work together, And here yes, it's a small entity but we are showing, in this experiment, we're showing that it can be done. We can work together to create something bigger, than what we inherited.
Before I go to the questions on what do they call it on the phone, from being called Mbazo, the one who chops, and I have a question about that, but let me ask my first question first, and getting people to believe in your message. Beyond the fact that you can be very vocal and you have a lot of conviction about a lot of things. You have very, very towering conviction, to put it mildly. What is the key thing that you use to get people to believe in your dream? Because being as intelligent as you are, sometimes you can see 10 years and even 5 years ahead of where you're standing, or you can see something about this company that the people themselves, because of the mess they find themselves in, and they've gotten to a point where they now believe in what they're seeing. Their perception is their reality at that point. How do you get people to believe?
Wow, how do you get people to believe? In my case, I try to walk the journey with them, right? You may have the vision, right? But that vision is something that needs to be, people should feel like they have co-created.
They own the vision.
The thing, right? Okay. So even my approach to strategy formulation is different. I don't take my leadership team of, let's say, 12 leaders, go out for 3 days, we come back with a strategy. Starting from Microsoft, MTN, here in Altron, took in Altron 100 leaders of the business. We went out to go and do strategy. 100. Usually it's just 12, 13 people, 100, go there. The good thing about that is, first, and when we were there, we were brutally honest about our reality. Many of them they were not even aware that things were as bad as they are, They start to understand, being open and transparent, and understand our challenges, right? But also we start to look at what are our strengths? What are the things that we can build around? And start to mobilize around that. And as we're discussing there, you're starting to have a shared understanding of both the challenge and what is possible, Yes, you've got this vision, but allow this thing to emerge out of the people. Of course, we are guiding this thing. Allow it to emerge. And as you are discussing, and you have now, you're coming back from that strategy, you have a team of people that can, when they are being asked by their manager, by their employees, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? It's not like we, the only 12 people that were there, will come back and try and get the buy-in of the... No, they were there. They understand. They even understand the choices, the trade-offs that we're making. They will be able to explain to them why we are doing what we are doing. Because we have debated there, we did all of these things. So for me, the approach, that inclusive approach, but it should not just be an inclusive approach that is not guided. You need to, kind of like know where you want to take this thing. It should not just be something that emerges, then suddenly we are surprised with what comes out.
And people are surprised why people don't want to follow them.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're chopping, and as you're chopping people that Bill had hired.
Yeah.
How difficult were those conversations? I mean, you speak mildly about them here in the book, but How difficult were those conversations? Because in one end you walk in and here's this black guy, and in your quiet manner sometimes people might think you are inaccessible, but eventually people get to know you and they get to be able to and people see you from far, and now the difficulty with, and especially when you chop at the top, because those are friends, those are people we've lived, those are people we braai with.
Yes.
How difficult were those conversations?
Listen, so you have just been hired, right? You're the CEO, you have just been hired. What are the chances that you're going to be fired the next day? They've just told the whole world that you are now the new. So you've got like 12 to 18 months.
You've got a window of
opportunity. A window of opportunity. If you do not use that window of opportunity to thrive, then you will not going to be able to do things, right? So you need to use that moment, So that's one thing, that window of opportunity. But don't undermine people. The board, it is such an important structure that one has to, sit down with the board, explain. I took the time to explain, to share with them the thinking, why this guy, why, we have to make choices, and this is where we are going, and this guy, because of this and this and this and that, but let us agree on one thing here. We are going to treat people better than fair, When it comes to packages or whatever, we are going to, because these people have contributed so much into the company, when you meet with them out there, they must never think that, you did, yes, they may not like that you took them out, but they can never say that you were unfair to them, right? And or you were being disrespectful. So I always try and get the board. Same thing I did at MTN, same thing at Microsoft. Get the board behind you so that when these people come, because they will always now, once you start to have one-on-one conversations, they will run to the people that hire them, And when they go there, they must arrive there already, say, sorry, this is what he says, but but how can we help you so that the exit can be smooth? That's the kind of discussion that they must have. When I'm saying we now, as black leaders, sometimes we do not use. We are given the power, but we do not use the power that we've been given. Do you know what I'm saying? We do not effect the changes that we should be. And we end up actually being entangled in this thing and we sinking because we did not make the calls, that we should have made. And we need to be much more bold when it comes to this thing. But of course, none of us wake up in the morning saying, I'm looking forward to getting rid of a person. Immediately it's like that, then you know that there's something, you are sick, Okay. But these calls have got to be made, and let's make these calls, but of course it must be informed by fairness, respect, and it must be aligned with the strategy.
Okay, so let's go to the people.
Yes.
The people are, what do they call it? They have interesting questions all around. I was going to ask you this question, but they've asked it. So you've done well as a business executive. And in my question, I was going to ask you, what's next? Are you going to be an entrepreneur soon? But somebody is asking here, how do you take what you've learned from, building businesses and turning around businesses, and how can you use that to become an entrepreneur? And are you thinking about it?
Yes. Look, when I look at where some of the journeys that we're taking as Altron, and I think one can possibly end up in that space, as we do some of the things that we're doing. That's probably where one will end up in that space, in line with. So that is
tech
my
thinking.
that is the kind of the long-term thinking, because it would be really, really great to end up with a truly black-led owned company that is doing great things in the technology space,
Yeah.
and we don't have that today, really, So that would be that's one of the possibilities. So it's something that is in my mind. Yeah,
Okay.
that thing.
All right. I don't want you to spill your what do they call it, the surprise. Because for me, your life will always be one of those that I'll be looking out to you also. What happens next with this man? But somebody's asking, is there any particular opportunity you're not eyeing, but is there somewhere where you're thinking, this is the next big thing in tech?
This is the next big thing in tech.
Yeah. So when you look at technology and the technology space, what do you see as being the next big thing? I mean, obviously, as what do they call it, as a CEO, you have.
I would say the next big thing is this artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Yeah, artificial intelligence. Today, I think people like Elon Musk and companies like Google, they're already experimenting around cars that are self-driven cars. All of that, at the back of all of that, the technology that's powering that is artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Right? So that is the thing that is going to be really, really transforming our society in a big way. It does not necessarily mean that people are going to lose jobs. In fact, what it means is that it's actually going to be opening up even new areas where we have not been and creating new opportunities for people. So if I were to invest and try and build my skills around, I would try and read a lot more around the artificial intelligence, data analytics, data mining, that world, because we're talking about huge amount of data, but out of those data, processing it, coming up with insights that then guide different actions. That field around the data is the next big thing. Other people talk about data is the new oil kind of thing. Yes. But at the core of it, data alone, it means nothing. It's about how you use it, coming out with insights that inform action. That is where the value is around the data. That's where I would focus on.
So somebody has asked the question here, is when you're chopping and you're living up to the nickname that had been given to you, the 3 buckets, and how do you create them? Fire immediately, watch over 18 months, and retain. Like what are the I mean, it's not the same everywhere.
Yes, it's not.
But you have systematically built a way of being able to identify these things.
Look, assuming that because you always, the whole process you're doing it, you need to preserve yourself. You should not end up being a casualty yourself.
Yes.
Right? So you need to, I always say that if my financial director and my human resource director are falling in the category of remove immediately, I never remove them immediately because they need to be my partner. I need to be close to them sufficiently to be in a position where I know a lot more about what they do, because in the finance space, that's where all of this, get to know what's going on there. Also on the people side, plus as you're doing the chopping and this, you need to execute. And the execution, you are not doing it yourself. You're doing it through your through your human capital person. If that person you have chopped, then you have got no partner. So I would say that so just using that thing, keep the finance person as long as possible, even if they are not. But the other ones, don't keep people, because these are the people that are going to undermine you. You realize that somebody, no matter what, this person does not buy into your strategy. You sit down and do this, they just do not buy into it.
Our problem that we've had, and I've had it too, and you raised it a couple of times in the book. our notion that because I'm black, the black leaders in the business are going to support me.
Oh. Mm.
And you know, being typical Mteto, you speak about it and then you brush it over and carry on with it. And you've done that and you've done very well about it.
Mm.
But sometimes it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth.
It does, it does. I mean,
Huh?
the people that you go out of your way to even bring into this environment of yours,
Yes.
they become the very people that go and either don't perform or they go and align themselves with forces that are really against, you know, and this thing, it just keeps happening all the time. I don't know why is it like this, but what I've realized now is to accept that it will happen, right? So that it's not a surprise when it happens, because
Yes.
I've seen it so many times, and it has happened everywhere I go. People come in, you go and recruit the person. The next thing, you see the alignments and this, and find that, gee, you know, this person is not behind me at all. In fact, this person is actively working against what I'm trying to do here, you know? And yeah, but I don't, is it something that is uniquely black thing? I think white people would find the same thing as well.
Okay.
They would find that when they hire other white people, they end up, you know. So what I'm just saying is I don't expect that people
Are going to support you because of
just
the-
because you are black.
Okay.
Mm.
I think for us it becomes bitter maybe because of from our experiences,
Yes,
what do they call it, as a
yes,
nation,
yes.
and where we come from. And you're thinking, I was hoping that we are all aligned
Yes.
in the transformation we're trying to bring, and therefore I wouldn't expect that person to be the one that actually deals with me in this way.
Yes, exactly.
What are the hallmarks of an ethical leader that South Africa requires today? So if you had the resources to build a leader from scratch, what would be the things that you would bring on? Beyond the things that you are known for, integrity, fairness, and all of that. What other things would you incorporate into this type of a person that you would bring?
I think I would call it authentic.
Okay.
You know? Although I don't talk about being authentic, but you can conclude that is the kind of a leader that I try to be. You know, when I say that, align with who you are.
Yes.
You know, if you've got that self-awareness, once you have that self-awareness, then try to align yourself with who you are, the things that come naturally. For example, for me, listening comes natural because I'm not the most talkative person. It comes natural. So I would create this thing called Izimbizo. Remember the Izimbizo of, I don't know if it was Thabo or whoever, the ANC used to do Izimbizo. But I do those things, you know, go and listening to our employees guiding me and telling me, you know, what are the things that we can do better, you know, and that kind of thing. Being, you're up there, but stay connected with the people, you know. And this thing of, for example, look at the situation where for almost 3 days we could not deploy our army, maybe even a week. Why? Because I think we had a leader who was being given certain kind of information, right? And that information was not accurate. You should always assume that is going to be the case. People will tell you misinformation or will tell you what they think you want to hear. You need to create ways and means of being connected to the grassroots. My way of being connected to the grassroots is to create this, what I call them, round tables. From time to time, once a month, you go and connect and bring people, different people, you listen to them. You listen, you're not undermining your leaders, but so being authentic, being connected, very, very connected. The other thing that is important is holding people accountable. The reason why we are not moving things forward, whether you do this thing that you said you're going to do or not to do, there are no consequences. So what's the motivation for doing anything? You know, just sit around, take my packs, you know. So nobody's holding people accountable. So when talking about this ethical leader, you know, we have many examples here of leaders that have clearly done wrong things, you know, but they're sticking around, they're still not resigning. Oh, this is a problem. You know, these people they should either resign themselves or you call them, hey, man, you know, you understand the ethical code of this company. Yes. You know, you go. You know, it's that thing holding others accountable, and also holding yourself accountable.
A question that comes from something that has bothered me also for a very long time. So, you went to school at an early age.
Yes.
Privileges of being a teacher's child.
Yes.
I also went to school at an early age. Privileges of being the teacher's child. So, should we be reducing the school-going age? That's the one question. But first and foremost, what should we be doing in terms of technology and data in education to improve our education system? And improve education as a whole? Because I think for me, there are gaps.
Yes,
you know,
yes,
we went into the foray of bringing on graduates and after things. There is a gap, and it's very big. You know, even with graduates that are getting from university, there's still a bit of a gap, and you know that gap comes from lower down.
Yes,
so,
yes.
What are the things you think we should be doing in the area of maybe technology and data to be able to make the schooling system better?
So, I think before I even get to technology, there are other things that I would do. So, what are those things? You remember I indicated that leadership matters.
Yes.
Leadership matters. So, we probably have in South Africa, I don't know, 400,000 teachers or so, around that. But linked to that, maybe we have, maybe, I don't know, 10,000 principals, I don't know. Focus, you know, there's this thing called leverage. Where is it that if you can make an impact, that impact will have the biggest ripple effect? Don't try and tackle the 400,000 teachers. Try and check, out of the, I don't know, let's say it's 10,000, the 10,000 teachers, the principals that we have, do we have the best people there? If not, change, put the right teachers. Have you ever seen a school that has got no resources, no internet connection, nothing, but have got a good principal? Results, top. Good principal, they have no internet. It was the same, well, there was no internet when some of us grew up, you know, came from Tabasa, there was none of that, but a good principal hold the other teachers accountable. They're driving a agenda in that school. That thing, the teaching, the discipline, all of that thing is what is required. It starts from the leader. So I would concentrate first on empowering and strengthening the leadership in terms of our education system. Then, of course, use technology, because many of our teachers have got huge skills gaps. The only way that one of the ways we can impact them quickly, is to online training. Give them those iPads, invest in that, make sure that their increases and everything is linked to them taking the online lessons around that, because it's these guys. If we do not improve the skills levels of our teachers, we are always going to be in this situation. The material is there online, is there. We just need to drive an agenda for these teachers.
There's so many questions flying in, and we're running out of time. And you know, as I said, me and you can talk until the cows come home, and the cows are already coming home. I don't want to start you off on this one. And you said in the book that when you took on the Altron, I'll call it an assignment. 'cause
Yes,
for me,
it's an assignment.
you're what do they call it? You will move, and you already have something in mind. You said it was an 8-year assignment, and that 8-year assignment, you're on to your 4th year now.
Yes, yes.
What next for Mteto? What is next? And your life is so incredible that something is already there. Somebody is, and why not ESCOM?
Okay, look, so what's next? I think for me, I need to sit through this Altron piece of work that I'm doing here.
Yes.
I need to sit through, and it may end up at a place where it transforms completely to being, let's say, a black entity,
Yes.
truly, you know. So I would rather continue to drive that thing
Okay.
beyond, you know, to make sure that you leave behind something that is really, really strong, that is also international, that is, you know, so for me, that is one possible route. You know? Yeah. The other route is after those, that in the next 4 years, you exit, and for me, I'd like to, today, there is so many CEOs that I am mentoring. Maybe it's a wrong word to say mentor, it's more coaching.
Yes.
Yeah, coaching. And what they enjoy in terms of that relationship is the fact that it's not a theoretical. You can go to any executive coach, but people that have not been there, it's just theoretical. But in the way we're connecting, it's like somebody who has walked the path and saying, you know, go try this and try this. Oh, I've got a problem with my board. Okay, you know, go and do this, and this, and then we meet again in 2 months' time, testing, okay, this is what I've done, this is the reaction. You know, that's the kind of, I would like to do that thing even more when, you know, so I would rather invest in, you remember that thing of principles?
Yeah.
If I'm investing in helping these
Yes.
CEOs, they will impact so many people that are working under them. So the impact will be much, much more than if I were to go run an ESCOM. Hopefully, a CEO of ESCOM will be part of these people. And another CEO of PRASA or whatever,
Yes.
you know. Yeah, so the impact is much bigger.
It's much bigger.
Yeah.
Mteto, thank you.
Yeah.
First, thank you for an incredible book. You know, you start the book off, and you're listening to the stories and everything told by the family, and you're thinking, was this book designed for this man to be this lovable? You know, for you to be able to appreciate. But you get to a point where you're saying, he's candid. He's, you know, he's telling the story as it should be. Thank you for a beautiful book. That's first thing to you. Thank you to the Altron team for making this work.
Oh.
To me, it's what they call it. I kept on fretting about whether you will have enough time to be able to sit like this. But, you know, having read the book, I know you believe in developing people, and this is what we're doing here. Thank you to our audience out there on YouTube, on Vimeo, our GMA staff on Teams, the publishers of the book. Thank you to Zoleka and Anda for making you write this book. That you must convey as my personal gratitude to them, both of them. And you have actually answered one of the questions that are here. Somebody is asking if you will perform master classes for youngsters who are aspirational and are looking for what do they call to grow in as leadership.
Yes.
To me, Lambulo, thank you.
Thank you.
Ipelel Kulu, thank you, sir. It's you, what do they call it? You continue to shine.
Thank you so much, Tsepo. Appreciate you for having
Thank
me.
you.
Yes.